Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Victoria from Keep It Holistic, where I talk about healthy living, motherhood, and more. And today I'm going to be talking about breastfeeding, so I'm going to be sharing some of my tips. And I was going to sit down and make a really detailed video. Usually I plan my videos, so I sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk about this in my video. But I haven't done that today because obviously I have a baby. I have a newborn. He's almost, he's a month and a half old, so it's a little bit chaotic. It's hard to sit down and plan videos, so I'm just going to be talking off the top of my head. And actually currently right now he's undergoing a nursing strike, which I'll talk about a little bit in this video, but it's really frustrating. I'm really tired. I've been up last night and the night before, and he's just refusing to nurse. I'll explain what that is in a second, but he wanted to join us for this video. But anyways, I have quite a bit of experience. So I have breastfed 3 kids, and my second, I breastfed the longest, and she was a little over 2. And actually that was the beginning of this pregnancy, so I breastfed up until the end of my first trimester with him. And I had to stop though because my milk dried up. But once you get to a year and a half old, at least for me, the breastfeeding really slows down. So first I want to talk about basic latch. And so that might seem intuitive, oh, you just put the baby on and nurse. It's really not. If you've ever breastfed, or if you've had a partner maybe, or a friend who has breastfed their baby, you'll know it doesn't just come naturally for most people. And so when you're first breastfeeding, it may be helpful in the beginning to have a lactation consultant help you. But when you go to latch the baby on, you want to make sure that they have their mouth wide open. And so when you pull the baby up to your chest, you want to make sure that the baby's body is lined up with your body. So you want their belly to be facing you. You don't want their belly to be facing up at the ceiling. What I do initially to get them used to breastfeeding is to kind of tickle their nose with my nipple. And that usually makes them open their mouth really wide. And as far as your areola goes, you should have a little bit more areola on the top than you should see on the bottom. If you don't really see any areola at all, that probably means you have too much of the breast in the baby's mouth. Now, if the baby's just sucking right on the nipple, then you probably don't have enough of the breast in the baby's mouth. So you want to have just a little bit of areola showing on the top when they're latched on. And you can have a lactation consultant help you check this to make sure you have it right. But that is the basics of a proper latch. And if this isn't your first baby, you may experience cramping in the beginning of the first few days. If this is your second or third or 10th baby, you may experience some cramping. Also really normal in the beginning to experience a little bit more nipple pain and sensitivity when you're breastfeeding. It hurts quite a bit. You have to kind of rough it out. I've actually, with my last 2, had cracked and bleeding nipples both times and gotten mastitis both times, right at about a week or 2 old. But it's important in the beginning to keep your nipples hydrated. And if you do get cracks, I would highly recommend trying to keep the area clean as much as possible. Get as much rest as much as possible, because you're more prone to infection when that happens once it's cracked. But it is normal to experience some pain, discomfort in the beginning. But if it's a lot of pain, or if you notice a crack in your nipple, it's really painful, it's bleeding, I would highly recommend checking the latch with a lactation consultant. So something else that a lot of people worry about once their baby gets 6 months old, they start to get a little bit older. Okay, their teeth are gonna come in. Am I gonna get bit? Maybe I should stop breastfeeding before their teeth come in because I don't want to get bit. I can tell you from my experience, I was worried about that when I was breastfeeding my second, because my first I didn't actually get that far. But my second I did, and I remember being really worried when I started seeing her teeth come in. But honestly, I wouldn't worry too much, because if the baby is latched on correctly, then their tongue actually prevents the teeth from coming down onto your breast. So that may give you a little relief. It is possible for them to bite you though if they're not latched on correctly, or if they're getting they get tired and start to fall asleep, they may accidentally bite. Or sometimes babies may do that intentionally to make you upset. Honestly, that's never happened to me, but some babies do that. And what you want to do is stick your finger in the corner of their mouth and release the suction, and then pull your breast out really quick and tell them no, you don't bite me. Eventually they'll learn okay, every time I do this, the milk gets taken away. So I'm not going to do this anymore. Eventually they'll figure it out and they'll stop doing it. But if you do get a bite, which doesn't happen really often, but if it does happen to you, I would try to keep it clean and maybe take a break from feeding on that side I would pump on that side and feed the baby on the other side for maybe a day or two to give it a chance to heal. Another issue that you can have while breastfeeding is mastitis, and it's more common in the beginning when you first start breastfeeding. You're more run down, that's why you're more prone to it. And then whenever the baby doesn't eat for a period of time, like if they start sleeping overnight, they start eating more solid food, or maybe you got separated from the baby for a little bit, you're more prone to mastitis at those points. So you gotta watch out for that. Look for a red spot on your breast or any pain on your breast. I made a whole video on that, so you can check that video. I'll have it up there. Another issue that you can have is called a nursing strike, which is actually what I'm experiencing right now. And a nursing strike is basically when the baby's like resisting feeding, like they're just not wanting to nurse. That's common during growth spurts or when they're going through like a developmental leap, whatever you want to call it. But that kind of leads me into my next point, which is that you have to have a committed attitude when it comes to breastfeeding. It's just like if you're trying to commit to a unmedicated birth, you have to have like a committed attitude. You have to say, okay, I want to breastfeed. I want to breastfeed like for a few months, or I want to breastfeed for a year, 2 years, whatever. You have to be committed to it, because in the beginning there's going to be a lot of hoops and stuff you have to jump through. You're going to have some pain, trouble feeding. Maybe your baby has a lip tie or something, which I'll talk about in a second. Mastitis, you may have people like, judging you or doubting you, like saying, oh, why don't you just give the baby a bottle? Oh, I don't think she's getting enough milk. You have to really be committed and kind of push out all those naysayers and all those struggles. You just have to stay focused on, okay, once I get past like these first few weeks, it's going to get easier. There may be times like nursing strikes, like right now, where it's going to be harder. But once you get past those hurdles, it's going to be like really beneficial for you and your baby. But sometimes it's not always possible. Some people have situations where they literally cannot produce enough milk for their baby, or something happens, they get separated from the baby's in the NICU or something, and their milk dries up. I don't know, there's lots of different situations that can happen. But there is a Weston A. Price formula. I'll link it down below. And that is a very nutritious formula. If you look at like conventional formula, the first ingredient is corn syrup, for example. There's a lot of yucky stuff in there that I normally would not feed my baby. So if I had to formula feed, I would recommend that. But there's also the option of pumping if you're able to do that. I personally have trouble with pumping because my body does not respond to a breast pump very well. It works like temporarily, like if I have to do it for a day or two, or one feed here and there, I can pump. But for me, I cannot pump like exclusively like some people do. Now when it comes to pumps, not all are created equal. With my first, the insurance company that we had, like they gave me a really bad pump. I think it was like a Mita. The breast pumps that I do recommend would be the Medela or a Spectra breast pump. I have a Spectra and I love that one. It's worked really well for me out of all the breast pumps. If your insurance covers that, or if you're able to buy it, I would get a Spectra breast pump if you're looking for an electric breast pump. And I'd also recommend getting a pumping bra if you're going to be pumping at all. I don't really pump a whole lot, but I do have a pumping bra because it gives you the opportunity to be hands-free. There also are pumps that go like right in your bra, and you can just like walk around. You can even drive your car pumping. So if you're really like a busy working mom, I would recommend one of those. If you're just pumping like once in a while, or sometimes, the Spectra would be a good option. And if you want something that's like really portable, and maybe you just don't want the electric breast pump, like maybe you really rarely use the breast pump, then a hand or like manual pump would be good. There's a Medela one that's really good. So there's lots of different options for breast pumps. It just depends on your own situation. I also really recommend getting a Haka breast pump. So when you're feeding the baby on one side, on the opposite side you're gonna leak. And so if you put the Haka there, it's just like a little suction cup thing that just suctions onto your breast, and it catches the extra milk. And what that allows you to do is to kind of build up a little stash in the freezer. Some people might not find that necessary, but I really like to have a little insurance policy when I have a baby, like, and I'm breastfeeding. Like, it gives me like a few days worth of milk. And so like if I had to have a surgery suddenly or something like that, I know that I have extra milk stored up. So that is an option. I highly recommend it. And there's different types of ways to store milk. I personally just put my milk into milk storage bags, but some people don't like the plastic, and so another option is to get small mason jars if you want a plastic-free option. And you want to leave space on the top of the jar so that when the milk expands while freezing, that the jar doesn't break. But I've seen people successfully do that, so that's a good plastic-free option. As far as bottles go, I really like to use glass bottles. I'll have the ones that I use linked down below. There's now probably a lot more. I got these like 5-6 years ago when my first was born, so the ones I use are the Philips Advent glass bottles. But yeah, so I think I've covered everything that I can think of off the top of my head. Actually, I just thought of something else. I should mention this before I close the video. Some people can have an oversupply of milk. Something I recommend if you are in that situation, you have a baby that is choking on your milk, they get really fussy when they start feeding, is to try laid back breastfeeding. So laying back like on the couch, have some pillows behind you, kind of just like lean back and then put the baby on your chest and have them feed that way. That helps to slow down the milk and prevents the milk from spraying out and like baby choking on it. So I recommend that. I also recommend if you're in that situation, you could pump a little bit before feeding them. That helps reduce like that forceful letdown. So I think this is everything I was thinking about talking about in this video. Obviously, there's a lot more to breastfeeding, but these are my tips, and this is from my experience breastfeeding 3 kids. There is a book called The Womanly Art of Breastfeeding by the La Leche League, and that is a very detailed book. I've read parts of it, I haven't read the whole book, but if you want to know more about breastfeeding, you want more detailed guide, I recommend that book. Hey guys, I just realized I was just about to edit and realized I didn't mention it with a nursing strike that it is completely normal. It doesn't mean that you're not producing enough milk or anything like that. Same with cluster feeding, and that's common with newborns. It can happen at any time, but with newborns especially, they'll cluster feed, which means that they'll feed with like every half hour or something like that, like really close together, and then they'll sleep for a longer period of time after that. But if you see them feeding closer together suddenly, that's normal. The nursing strike where they were refusing to nurse, that's normal too. It doesn't mean anything about your milk supply. You don't need to start eating like tons of oatmeal or doing any of those lactation drinks. Honestly, when you're breastfeeding, you don't need like that special stuff like the teas and the special food and stuff, unless you're really struggling with low supply. But most of the time, for most people, if you're eating a healthy diet and you're drinking enough water, that's really important. Make sure you're drinking enough water while nursing. So yeah, don't worry too much about that. Sometimes, your diet, like dairy especially, can make the baby more gassy or their tummy upset, or can make them have weird stools and stuff. So that could sometimes be a concern, but most women statistically do not struggle with low supply. It's usually actually a lack of support or just knowledge about breastfeeding that makes women think that they don't have enough milk, but most of the time women do have enough milk. Now there are signs that the baby might not be getting enough milk, and that could be like if they're not having enough diapers, especially wet diapers. Now if as far as like stools go, breastfed babies do not produce as much stool, so it's normal to go like several days, like 4 or 5 days or something, without a bowel movement, but they should be having lots of wet diapers. And also you can track their weight gain too, and as long as they're gaining weight, they're not like losing weight. You can also do weighted feeds to make sure that the baby's getting enough milk. You can always talk to the pediatrician or lactation consultant if you need some help. So I just had to stop and feed him, but I wanted to close this video anyway. I think he's about ready to go down for a nap. If you have any questions about breastfeeding, this is just like a basic guide, but if you have any questions, please drop them down below. And please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and leave me a comment. And I'll see you guys again soon. You all guys. Say bye, Teddy. He has my hair. Bye-bye.